Muy buenas tardes, otra vez. Gracias por estar esta tarde con nosotros. Vamos a compartir en este momento un trabajo que esperamos iniciar esta tarde, pero que sabemos que no culminará esta tarde. Es un trabajo que esperamos que tenga un futuro. Nos proponemos realmente tratar de dar los primeros pasos hacia definir en qué dirección podemos nosotros movernos, no en plano individual, sino ya como colectivo, ¿verdad? Hacia el desarrollo de una agenda investigativa en el campo de la tecnología educativa en general y en algunas áreas dentro del campo en específico para Puerto Rico y el Caribe. Yo creo que somos bastante ambiciosos en ese sentido, pero es también sumamente necesario. Esta tarde yo entonces le pedí al doctor Siemens, que ha tenido la experiencia de estar trabajando por varios años justamente en un proyecto de definición de una agenda de investigación en e-learning para Canadá. Y lo que queremos es que él comparta brevemente con nosotros en esta primera parte, compartiendo, ¿verdad?, sobre esas experiencias, de manera que nosotros podamos aprender a través del modelaje y definir lo que sería nuestro propio rumbo. Sin más que preámbulos, voy a permitirle entonces al doctor Siemens a que nos hable acerca, el título que le dimos a esta breve charla que él va a tener es Shaping Our Future, The Canadian Experience. Luego, cuando él termine, como él mismo dice, esta es nuestra conversación. Se abrirá a nuestra conversación. Y yo estimé que algunas de las cosas que podríamos hacer sería iniciar compartiendo algunas ideas, tratar a lo mejor de ver cómo nos podemos organizar hacia este proyecto y tener una mirada primera hacia el futuro. Y si de aquí sale incluso algún tipo de calendario o agenda o de cómo nos podemos mover en esa dirección, pues maravilloso será. Yo creo que son unas expectativas bastante altas, ¿verdad? Si podemos por lo menos comenzar a reflexionar, comenzar a compartir en esta tarde, yo creo que vamos a lograr muchísimo. Así que nada, vamos entonces ahora a dejar con ustedes al doctor Siemens para que nos hable acerca de la experiencia que han tenido en Canadá.
That's me.
Yes.
Okay, I think this is on. Did I turn it on? Yes. I'm not sure exactly what was discussed, but here's how I see the afternoon. I will provide a bit of an overview of two projects that you may or may not be interested in that reflect a bit of an attempt to look at what a strategy in terms of research around e-learning might look like. And then I'll provide one example of a country that actually has done quite a nice job with that strategy. There's a few resources to additional papers that you may want to look at in the future as well, which I'll provide links to as well. So first of all, I want to present, I'll start off by looking at a recent doctoral seminar that we hosted at University of Athabasca. Terry Anderson and I organized this particular session, and one of our goals around this was to get a conversation started around what kind of research activity, what kind of a research agenda is required around network learning and social media and the learning process. We ran this last July. We're running another session next June 2011. Certainly if anyone's interested, let me know. But I just want to talk a little bit about our experience and how that may or may not inform some of your discussions that you're going to have later on. As I understand it, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I'm going to do a few quick overviews on this, and then the bulk of the time you're going to spend in discussions amongst yourselves. I'll sit over there and play on my computer, and then if someone says something to me in English, I will respond. So that's the plan I see happening. One of the things we tried to do here, and I think this is important especially when you start talking about research agendas, because it's fashionable occasionally to stop and say, hey, we need a research agenda. But they do have a very practical purpose, because what a research agenda allows is a group of educators to get together and ask questions about what's important. What's important now? What kind of ideas do we need to be aware of? What's the impact of some of these ideas, and those kinds of things. So the value, I think, of a research agenda, as we were trying to craft it with our TechRe seminar, was to say, what can we do as a group that we might not be able to do individually necessarily? And the approach we took was heavily discussion-based, as you would imagine. It was intended to be a doctoral seminar. We brought in, I believe altogether, we had 6, 7 different countries represented. We had a few speakers that we invited out to present. Alison Littlejohn from the Caledonian Academy out of Scotland. And then we brought in our group of researchers within TechRe, looking at everything from social media, personalization, adaptation, semantic web, mobile learning, and openness in education. So those were the key areas that we addressed. The difficulty in this is it's fun to have conversations with academics, but when you're done with the conversation, it can be intellectually stimulating and everything else. But when you're done, the problem comes in, well, now what do we do? And in particular with this seminar, we didn't do a very good job of the now what do we do. This was a 5-day session. I think it was very enjoyable at least I certainly enjoyed it. We had some great ideas exchanged. But the decided follow through. We didn't manage to put together a succinct list of these are the research topics that need to be addressed. These are perhaps methodologies to address them. We instead looked at what was the existing state of researchers. We had students that came in, presented, shared their ideas with us, but it didn't, in my eyes, achieve its a potential outcome of it, which was to create an agenda of research that we could use to move social network learning forward. So that's an example, I think, of a very great way to share information, but perhaps something else needs to be done in terms of giving it some finite focus. How will we decide, let's say 2 years from now, whether it was successful? I'm not saying you have to reduce everything to metrics, but you do need to find a way to answer some questions such as, what are we going to do when we leave here? So that's just one key takeaway from that. Just prior to that, back in the days when I had hair, and we put together a research activity that we looked at developing a pan-Canadian e-learning research agenda. Now, we did this heavily through online interaction as well. There is value in getting together face-to-face, but sometimes, especially if you're a large country that covers 4 time zones, you might as well just have your discussions online too. So we looked at, and we brought in guest speakers, and we covered a series of topics that related over a multiple period weeks, where we looked at and there's a couple resources I want to highlight because you may find these valuable. Particularly the week 1 resources, where we looked at the desire for a pan-Canadian e-learning strategy, which was intended for government funding to move the field forward. You'll find that paper interesting if you're focused on developing something within a Puerto Rican context. The second paper is very valuable as well, by Grania Canol. She's with the Open University, and she looked at an international perspective of mapping e-learning strategy to practice. And she does a nice overview of numerous international regions and sort of the research agendas or approaches that they took within that. There's also the Jamie Rossiter publication from 2002 that you may find valuable, because that does a nice comparison of how different regions of the world support e-learning initiatives within their country.